My suitcases were ready by the door since the night before, but my son-in-law's mocking laugh chilled my blood more than the winter wind. I am Adelaide. I am 68 years old, and I was a head nurse for 3 decades. I know how to distinguish a real emergency from a false alarm, but I never saw the blow coming that my own family had prepared for me. They think I'm a useless old woman who only serves to take up space, but they forgot that this house, their luxury refuge, has my name on the deed. I was always a woman of order. At the hospital, chaos meant losing lives, and at home, order meant peace of mind. However, ever since my daughter Lucy and her husband Robert moved in with me temporarily 5 years ago, my peace had vanished. The house is big, a solid 1970s build, in a neighborhood that became exclusive over time, full of old trees and cobblestone streets. My husband Ernest and I built it with the sweat of our brows, thinking of leaving a legacy. I never imagined that this legacy would become my own prison. That morning, the dining room looked like a battlefield. Breakfast scraps everywhere, eggshells, coffee stains on the embroidered tablecloth I had ironed the day before, and toast crumbs on the floor. My grandkids, 2 spoiled little tornadoes I adore, but who don't know the meaning of the word boundary, were running around screaming with mouse ears on. "We're going to Disney! We're going to see Mickey!" they yelled, jumping on the velvet sofas. I walked down the stairs slowly, minding my knees, dragging my small brown leather suitcase. It's an old but sturdy bag, the same one I used when I went to medical conferences in the city. I was excited. I hadn't been on vacation in years. Lucy had asked for my credit card months ago to book the flights and catch a deal. And I, naive as a novice nun, gave it to her thinking it was a family gift that they were finally including me in their plans. I reached the living room and saw Robert trying to zip up a gigantic suitcase, one of those modern ones with wheels that spin in every direction. Lucy was flipping through a stack of documents with that air of importance she adopted the minute she married him. "Good morning," I said, trying to make myself heard over the kids' racket. "I'm ready. What time is the shuttle getting here?" A sudden silence fell, like someone had cut the audio cable on a movie. Robert looked up sweaty and red-faced from the effort of wrestling the luggage shut. He looked at me, then looked at my little brown suitcase and let out a laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a dry, raspy sound, heavy with mockery. "You?" he asked, like I had just told an absurd joke. "Mother-in-law, please, where do you think you're going with that old piece of junk?" I felt a knot in the pit of my stomach, that cold sensation that warns you something is terribly wrong. I looked at my daughter, looking for support, looking for a logical explanation. "Lucy, honey, the trip? The tickets you bought with my card." Lucy didn't even look up from the passports. She kept counting the dollar bills in her hand. "Oh, Mom, don't start getting confused now we're in a hurry," she said, using the exact tone of voice she used to scold the kids. "We used your card because Robert's was maxed out. Obviously, we're going to pay you back eventually, but the trip is for us. It's a family trip." "Family." I repeated the word, feeling my legs tremble. "And what am I? A neighbor?" Robert straightened up and wiped his hands on his pants. He walked toward me with the arrogance of a man who feels he owns the world without having worked a day for it. "You're the grandmother, Adelaide, and grandmothers stay home. Somebody has to watch the place." He made a sweeping gesture that took in my living room, my furniture, my life. "We can't just leave the house empty for 15 days. The lawn needs watering, the mail needs bringing in, and you have to make sure nobody breaks in. Besides, let's be realistic. You can't keep up with the pace at the parks. You'd just slow us all down. You'd be a burden. A burden." The word echoed in my ears. Me, the woman who had lifted patients twice my weight. Me, the one who had carried the financial weight of this house since Ernest died. Me, who washed their laundry, cooked their meals, and watched their kids whenever they wanted to go out partying. "But I thought," I stammered, feeling the humiliation crawl up my neck, hot and stinging. "You thought wrong, mother-in-law?" Robert interrupted, kicking my leather suitcase out of the way into a corner like it was garbage. "Better help us get this stuff out to the cab. He's already honking outside. And please don't forget, the dog needs his special food twice a day. I don't want Duke getting skinny while we're gone." I stood paralyzed. My hands, usually steady and skilled at finding difficult veins, trembled at my sides. It wasn't sadness I felt. At first I thought it was the urge to cry. But no, it was something deeper. It was the sudden, brutal comprehension of my reality. For years I had told myself they were here to keep me company, that they loved me, that we were a team. But in that instant, watching my daughter's back as she walked out without even giving me a kiss goodbye, the blindfold fell from my eyes. I wasn't a member of the family. I was the janitor. I was the unpaid domestic help. I was a convenient accessory that came included with the free house. I dragged my feet out to the porch. The morning sun was bright, insultingly cheerful. The cab driver was helping Robert with the bags. The kids were already inside, fighting over the window seat. "Bye, Grandma," the oldest yelled without much interest, never taking his eyes off his tablet. Lucy stepped up to the passenger window before getting in. "Mom, I left a list of things on the fridge. The landscaper comes on Tuesday. You have to pay him because we didn't have time to get cash. I'll pay you back later. And don't touch the AC in our room, it messes up the settings." "Have a good time," I managed to say, my voice breaking. "Oh, and mother-in-law," Robert yelled from the back seat. "If the mail comes, put everything in my office. Don't be snooping, don't open anything. See you in 15 days. Behave yourself." The cab pulled away, leaving a cloud of gray exhaust that slowly dissipated in the clean neighborhood air. I stood there in the driveway of my own home, watching them drive away with my dignity in that yellow car. I went back inside. The silence of the house was overwhelming. I walked through the living room, dodging the scattered toys. I went to the kitchen. Dirty dishes were piled high in the sink. A spilled cup of coffee was slowly dripping onto the floor. "Clean this up, Adelaide," a voice whispered in my head. The voice of habit. The voice of submission. But then something shifted. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I saw an older woman, yes, with gray hair pulled back in a strict bun and wrinkles mapping out a hard life. But I also saw the eyes of the woman who had run an emergency room during the '89 quake. I saw the firm jaw of the woman who didn't back down when the hospital board tried to cut the medication budget. "Watch the house," I said out loud. My voice sounded strange in the empty room. "Yeah, Robert. I'm going to watch the house. I'm going to make sure this house meets the exact fate it deserves." I walked toward the office. That was Ernest's office, my husband's sanctuary, a sacred place that smelled of tobacco and old wood. Ever since they moved in, Robert had claimed it as his own. He had taken down Ernest's diplomas to hang up movie posters and his amateur softball trophies. I walked in and smelled the stale scent of a closed-off room. Robert had told me not to snoop, not to open anything. I stepped up to the desk. It was locked. But Robert, in his infinite arrogance, severely underestimated my powers of observation. I knew perfectly well he hid the key under a hideous plastic planter he kept on the windowsill. I lifted the pot, took the small silver key, and unlocked the center drawer. I didn't care about his dirty secrets or his magazines. I was looking for something specific, something that belonged to me. I shoved aside a stack of unpaid bills they were probably hoping I would pay by mistake, and I found what I was looking for at the very bottom, inside a green leather folder I had placed there myself years ago. I pulled out the original property deed and laid it on the desk. The paper was thick yellowed with age, but the black ink was clear and irrevocable. Sole owner, Adelaide Morales. There were no joint tenancies, no co-owners, no clauses protecting ungrateful children or parasitic sons-in-law. The house was mine, 100% mine. I sat down in the leather swivel chair, the one that used to be my husband's, and now squeaked under the weight of my decision. I looked at the calendar on the wall. I had exactly 15 days. 2 full weeks with no yelling, no orders, no contempt. I remembered an afternoon about 6 months ago when a polite young man knocked on our door. He was a real estate agent. He told me a group of investors was looking for large properties in the area to flip or for foreign clients paying cash. Robert had screamed at him to get off our property. "This house is not for sale, get out." But Robert wasn't the owner. I searched the drawer of the little side table in the living room where I keep my sewing threads. There, tucked between a spool of black thread and some needles, was the business card the young man had managed to slip me before my son-in-law slammed the door in his face. "Harvey Barnes, premium real estate, fast cash offers, absolute discretion." I held the card between my fingers. The cardstock felt cold and sharp. My heart, which minutes ago had been broken and humiliated, started beating to a different rhythm, the rhythm of war drums. I went to the kitchen, pushed the dirty dishes aside with a gesture of disgust, and poured myself a glass of water. I drank slowly, savoring the silence. Then I picked up the landline, that old cream-colored rotary phone hanging on the wall that they considered a useless relic. I dialed the number on the card. One by one, the digits rang out with a musical tone. "Hello," a professional male voice answered on the third ring. I cleared my throat. I was no longer the grandmother left behind. I was charge nurse Adelaide. "Good morning, Mr. Barnes. This is Adelaide Morales. You were at my house a few months ago." I paused, looking around, staring at the walls that had absorbed so many humiliations. "I am interested in selling, but it has to be fast. I have a 15-day window of opportunity, and I need the house empty and the deal closed before that window shuts." On the other end of the line, I felt the agent hold his breath before replying with contained enthusiasm. "Absolutely, Mrs. Morales. Could I come see you today?" I smiled. A real smile, one I hadn't felt in years. "Come in an hour and bring the paperwork. We are not going to waste any time." I hung up the phone and looked at the brown leather suitcase Robert had kicked aside. I picked it up, carefully wiped it off with the sleeve of my sweater, and placed it on the dining table in a place of honor. They had gone chasing plastic fantasies and costumes. I was staying right here in reality, about to execute the most delicate and satisfying operation of my life. Watch the house, they had told me. Oh, I was going to watch it all right. I was going to make sure it was never again a free hotel for ungrateful freeloaders. The game was on. The silence of the house settled over me once the phone was back on the hook. But this time it didn't weigh like a concrete slab. It felt clean, like a freshly sterilized operating room before a major surgery. I stood for a moment just staring at the receiver. My heart, that old engine that sometimes skipped a beat, was thumping with a power and regularity I hadn't felt since my emergency room shifts. I walked down the central hallway. My footsteps echoed on the hardwood that Ernest and I had picked out 40 years ago. I ran my hand along the wall, feeling the crayon marks my grandkids had left. Marks Lucy, with her eternal laziness, never cleaned up, claiming they were artistic expressions. To me, they had always been scars of disrespect. I walked into the kitchen. The disaster was still there. The spilled mug, the crumbs, the filth. Normally, my conditioned reflex would have been to grab a rag and the dish soap, put on my yellow gloves, and start scrubbing until my fingers wrinkled. But my hands stayed perfectly still at my sides. "No, Michel," I said out loud. I wasn't going to clean, not for them. If I was going to lift a finger, it would be to prepare the ground for my liberation. I headed to my bedroom, the only door I kept locked when I went out, even though I knew Robert had a spare key just in case of an emergency. Well, the emergency was here, just not the one he was expecting. I sat at my old mahogany vanity and opened the bottom drawer where I kept the winter blankets. I reached all the way to the back, feeling past the soft fabric and the scent of dried lavender, until my fingers brushed the cold metal of a small portable lockbox. I pulled it out and set it on the bed. It wasn't big, barely the size of a shoebox, but it was heavy. Heavy because of what it held, not what it was made of. I spun the dial to Ernest's birthday. The click of the mechanism was music to my ears. I lifted the lid. There were no crown jewels or gold bars inside, but there was something much more valuable right now: information and liquidity. First, I pulled out a black notebook. My shift log, as I jokingly called it. For 5 years, every time Robert borrowed gas money, every time Lucy used my card for groceries and forgot to pay me back, every time I covered the kids' private school tuition because they were short that month, I wrote it down. Date, item, and amount. In my small, sharp nurse's handwriting, I had recorded every single cent they had bled from me. I flipped the book open at random. March 12th. Robert's car repairs. $8,500. Promise to pay end of the month. Status unpaid. April 4th. Lucy's party dress. $4,200. Status unpaid. I turned the pages. The grand total at the bottom of the last page was chilling. With that money, I could have traveled the globe twice over. They said I was a burden, that I was living off their care. The notebook told the truth. They were the parasites, and I was the host, slowly dying away. Beneath the notebook was my real insurance policy, a savings passbook from an old bank account that had changed names twice, but was still active. Ernest had made me promise never to touch that money unless it was a matter of life or death. "It's your escape fund, Adelaide," he used to say. "You never know what life will throw at you." How right you were, old man. I checked the balance. Compound interest over 20 years had done its quiet work. I had enough liquid cash to rent a decent apartment and live comfortably for a year without even needing to sell the house. But selling the house wasn't about financial need. It was about surgical justice. It was about cutting out the tumor. I got up and went to the bathroom. I washed my face with cold water. Looking in the mirror, I noticed the tired, sad woman from this morning had vanished. In her place stood charge nurse Morales. I pulled my hair back tightly, smoothing down the grays. I took off my house apron and put on a navy blue silk blouse and dress pants. I put on my fake pearls, the ones that looked convincing enough to pass for the real thing, and applied a touch of terracotta lipstick. If I was going to negotiate my future, I had to look like the owner, not the grandmother. The doorbell rang 40 minutes later. Punctuality, I liked that. I opened the door. Harvey Barnes was younger than I remembered, maybe 35, wearing an impeccable suit and a sharp gaze. He had a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. When he saw me, his expression shifted from professional courtesy to a mix of surprise and respect. Maybe he expected to find the frightened little old lady he had seen last time, peeking over the shoulder of an aggressive son-in-law. "Mrs. Morales," he said, extending a firm hand. "It's a pleasure to see you again. And if I may say so, you look wonderful." "Come in, Harvey," I replied, shaking his hand with my nurse's grip, the kind that always surprises men. "We have very little time and a lot to discuss. Don't bother taking your shoes off. It doesn't matter if the floors get dirty anymore." I led him into the dining room. With a sharp wave of my hand, I shoved my grandkids' breakfast scraps into a corner of the table, not caring about the mess. Harvey watched the move, raising an eyebrow slightly, but said nothing. He was discreet. "Have a seat. Do you want coffee? I'm not offering because I don't have time to make it. Let's get straight to business." Harvey opened his portfolio and pulled out a legal pad and a tablet. "Straight to business. I love it. Mrs. Morales, I pulled the property records and ran the comps before coming over. Your property is a gem. Not so much for the house itself. Forgive my bluntness, it needs updating, but for the lot. 8,000 square feet in this neighborhood is something that just doesn't exist anymore." I nodded. I knew exactly what I held. "My kids are out of town," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "They come back in 15 days. By the time they step foot in the airport, I want this house to have a new owner and I want to be far away. Is that possible?" Harvey drummed his fingers on the table. His salesman brain was calculating commissions and risks. 15 days is an incredibly aggressive timeline, Adelaide. A traditional sale with mortgage underwriting takes months. Banks are slow, the bureaucracy is heavy. "I don't want banks," I interrupted. "I want cash. Investors. You mentioned last time you had foreign buyers or developers. People with briefcases, not mortgages." He smiled. A shark's smile, but a shark that was swimming on my side. "I do have a development group. They've been looking for months for a large lot to build luxury condos. 4 stories boutique living, they call it. They'd pay cash wire transfer immediately. They don't care about the condition of the house because, well, because they're going to tear it down." I finished the sentence for him. Harvey tensed, expecting me to get sentimental, expecting the widow to weep over the bricks she laid with her late husband. He looked at me cautiously. "Probably. Yes. Is that an issue for you?" I looked around. I looked at the walls that had absorbed Robert's shouting, Lucy's demands, the spoiled crying of the children. I looked at the ceiling with the water stain Robert had promised to fix 2 years ago and never touched. "Harvey, if it were up to me, I'd drive the wrecking ball myself," I said with a coldness that froze the air in the room. "Tear it down. Don't leave a single brick standing." Harvey relaxed his shoulders and let out a small, nervous laugh. "Wow, that is not the reaction I usually get, but it makes things a whole lot easier. If we sell this as a teardown for development, the land value spikes and the closing speed skyrockets. I can have a formal offer on your table by tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow is too late," I shot back, crossing my arms. "Call them right now. Tell them they have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but the offer expires in 48 hours. And I want a strict non-disclosure clause until the ink is dry at the title company. Nobody puts a for sale sign in my yard. I don't want nosy neighbors calling my daughter in Disney." Harvey nodded, visibly impressed, and pulled out his phone. "I'm going to make a couple of international calls. Excuse me." While he paced the porch, speaking rapidly into his phone with energetic gestures, I stayed in the dining room. I felt a strange vibration humming through my body. For years, they had made me believe I was slow, that I didn't understand how the modern world worked. Robert laughed at me when I couldn't figure out the smart TV remote. Lucy rolled her eyes when I asked why they were paying so much interest on their credit cards. Poor old thing, they thought. She's losing it. But it wasn't slowness, it was patience. The patience of someone who has looked death in the eye and knows you don't have to sprint, you just have to arrive on time. They mistook my silence for ignorance and my kindness for weakness. A fatal misdiagnosis. In medicine, a misdiagnosis kills the patient. In life, it kills the inheritance. I remembered an afternoon a few months back when I overheard Robert on the phone in the backyard. He thought I was deaf or asleep. Yeah, sure. As soon as the old bat kicks the bucket, we sell everything. This place is worth a fortune. We pay off my gambling debts and buy something modern on the coast. Just got to put up with her for another year or two. At the time, I felt pain, a sharp pain in my chest. But now remembering those words, I only felt crystal clear focus. They had already sold the house in their minds. They had already buried me. I was just expediting the paperwork with the minor detail that the check was going in my name, not theirs. Harvey walked back inside. His cheeks were flushed with adrenaline. Mrs. Morales, I have news. I'm listening. The investment group is extremely interested. They know the location. In fact, they've been buying up smaller homes on the next block over. They said if the title is clear and you are the sole owner, they can wire 50% as earnest money by Friday and the rest at closing next week. I am the sole owner, I assured him. I have the original deeds right here. The price. Harvey wrote a figure down on his legal pad and slid it across the table toward me. I stared at the number. I had to blink twice. It was obscene. It was an amount of zeros that simply didn't fit into my daily reality of going to the grocery store and arguing over the price of tomatoes. It was enough to buy 3 houses just like this one in another city. It was enough for a queen's retirement. Is that in dollars? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. That is in dollars, Mrs. Morales, at the current exchange rate. I felt the air leave my lungs for a second, but I quickly recovered. I pictured Robert's face if he saw that number. I pictured Lucy buying mouse ears with my credit card thinking she was exploiting me for a few $100 while she was losing millions. I accept, I said. Perfect. I need copies of your ID, the property taxes, the deed. Everything is ready. I pointed to the green folder I had already laid out on the side table. But I have one more condition, Harvey. He looked up, pen hovering. Name it. The house is sold as is, but completely empty of its occupants. I don't care if the furniture stays or goes to the landfill, but there are personal items, loads of clothes, toys, high-end electronics from my tenants. Usually the house is delivered broom-swept, ma'am. But if it's a teardown, the builders don't care if there's furniture inside. The machines will just crush it all. No, I said, a crooked smile creeping onto my lips. I don't want the machines to crush it. I want to hire an estate sale and express moving service. I want everything in this house that doesn't belong to me liquidated or donated before closing. Harvey looked at me confused. You want to sell your kids' stuff? I want to clean out my life, Harvey. And when they come back, I don't want them to find a single dirty sock to remind them they ever lived here. Whatever you make from selling the furniture and Robert's electronics, I paused, savoring the moment. Donate it to the St. Vincent Charity Nursing Home. They'll get a lot more use out of it than my son-in-law. Harvey let out a genuine belly-deep laugh. Adelaide, you are dangerous. I like it. I have a contact who does foreclosure cleanouts. They are fast and they are quiet. They roll in with box trucks, and in 6 hours, there isn't a speck of dust left. Call him. Have them come Monday. Done. We shook hands to seal the preliminary deal. His hand was warm, mine was cold and rock steady. When Harvey left, taking copies of my documents and the promise of a new life, I was alone again. But the stage had changed. I was no longer the abandoned victim. I was the general at her command post. I walked into the living room. The massive 80-inch TV that Robert had bought using Ernest's pension money that I loaned him for an investment dominated the wall. Enjoy it while it lasts, Robert, I muttered. 'Cause next week that screen is going to be entertaining the seniors at St. Vincent's. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of sherry, something I hadn't done in years. I sat in my favorite armchair, the only one they never used, because they said it smelled like old people. I pulled out my black notebook and a red pen. On the first blank page, I wrote in large letters, Operation Disney. Day 1. Evaluation phase complete. Objective total freedom. I looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky a violent orange. Duke, my old loyal Labrador, scratched at the glass door. I got up to let him in. He looked at me with his milky eyes and wagged his tail. "You're coming with me, Duke," I told him, scratching behind his ears. "To a place where there are no kids pulling your tail, and no sons-in-law kicking you when I'm not looking. We're going far away." The dog seemed to understand, sighing as he laid down at my feet. I had 14 days ahead of me. 14 days to erase 5 years of abuse. 14 days to pack up 40 years of memories and cut loose the dead weight. My eyes drifted to the kitchen calendar where Lucy had stuck a Mickey Mouse sticker on the day of their return. "Stay and watch the house," I repeated her words, the irony tasting as sweet as the sherry. "Don't worry, kids. I'm watching it so well, I'll make sure it gets top market value." Night fell over the house, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the dark. I was the one holding the switch now, and I was about to turn their lights out. Monday arrived with military precision, just the way I liked it. At exactly 8 o'clock, the St. Vincent de Paul charity truck parked in front of the house, partially blocking the driveway where Robert usually parked his SUV, with the arrogance of a plantation owner. It wasn't a fancy moving van. It was a battle-scarred work truck with peeling paint and an engine that coughed black smoke. But to me, it was my chariot of liberation. I opened the door before they even rang the bell. I was wearing my old charge nurse uniform, not the clinical white, but the navy blue two-piece I wore for administrative meetings. It made me feel bulletproof. "Morning, Mrs. Adelaide," called out Ray, the crew boss, a burly man with hands like shovels and an honest smile. "Mr. Barnes told us we were doing a deep clean today." "More like an exorcism, Ray," I replied, waving him inside. "Anything with a red tag goes. Furniture, clothes, toys, appliances, everything." Ray whistled as he stepped into the living room and saw the sheer scale of the job. I had spent Sunday marking my territory. The red tags glowed like shrapnel wounds across my daughter and son-in-law's possessions. The Italian leather sofa Robert bought and forbade anyone from touching with shoes on red tag. The next-gen gaming console red tag. Lucy's collection of designer bags piled up in the entryway red tag. "You sure about this, boss?" asked one of the younger guys, with Ray eyeing the massive TV with pure greed. "This stuff is worth a fortune." "Exactly why it's leaving with you," I said firmly. "I want you to sell it at your thrift store and use the cash for those orthopedic beds the nursing home needs. And step on it, boys. We don't have all day." They got to work. The sound of packing tape ripping across cardboard boxes and the scraping of heavy furniture became the soundtrack to my morning. I stood in the middle of the living room with my clipboard directing traffic like I was running triage after a multi-car pileup. "Watch the door frame. That display cabinet is heavy. Yeah, take the liquor bottles from the bar, too. Nobody drinks on my dime anymore." As they hauled out Robert's reclining chair, the one with the massage motor and cup holders, I felt a pang of perverse satisfaction. I pictured Robert coming home looking for his throne and finding nothing but empty space. He who used to mock my wicker chairs for being old lady furniture was about to see his modern luxury end up in a discount thrift store. Mid-morning, the landline rang. The chaos of the movers paused for a second. I knew who it was. I looked at the caller ID, international call. I let it ring 3 times. I took a deep breath. It wasn't fear I was feeling. It was the adrenaline of a hunter sitting in the blind. "Hello," I answered, keeping my tone perfectly neutral. "Mom, you finally picked up." Lucy's voice sounded distorted, backed by the tinny sound of carousel music and screaming children. "I've been calling your cell for 10 minutes and it's turned off." "My battery died, honey. I'm busy around the house. Is something wrong?" "Yes, what's wrong is that you're a disaster. We forgot the kid's allergy medicine, the pink syrup. I need you to go into my bathroom, find the bottle, and WhatsApp me a picture of the prescription so I can see if I can get something similar here at the park pharmacy." Not a single hello or how are you, just demands. I looked down the hall. 2 men were currently carrying Lucy's bathroom vanity out the door bottles and all dumped into generic cardboard boxes. "I can't do that right now, Lucy." Dead silence on the other end. The background noise of Disney seemed to freeze. "What do you mean you can't, Mom? It's for your grandkids? Are you watching your soap operas or what? I told you to stay and watch the house, not sleep all day." "I am watching the house," I said, my voice dropping an octave, growing raspy. "I'm doing a deep clean just like Robert always complained we needed. I can't go into the bathroom right now because they're cleaning in there." "Who's cleaning?" Her tone shifted from annoyed to suspicious. "Don't tell me you hired Carol. Robert said he didn't want strangers snooping around." It's not Carol. It's a specialized crew. Specialized mom, you sound weird. Look, I don't care. Find the prescription as soon as they're done and send it to me. Oh, and one more thing. Robert says to check if an envelope from the bank came in. It's urgent. If anything comes, I'll hold on to it. I lied. The envelope from the bank had arrived Saturday. It was an overdraft notice. It was already in the trash, shredded into pieces so small, not even a forensic team could put them back together. Fine, I gotta go. Mickey's coming out in the parade and the kids are being impossible. Don't forget to water the orchids. She hung up. No, I love you, no thank you. I stood there with the receiver in my hand, listening to the dial tone. Ray looked at me from the doorway, holding a box full of Robert's softball trophies. We good with this, Mrs. Adelaide. This goes to... We're good, Ray. I slammed the phone down onto the hook. Yes, that goes too. Let them take their past glories. There's no room for ego here anymore. By noon, the house was starting to look skeletal. The echo had returned, but it was different from the echo of loneliness I used to feel. It was a clean echo. Without my kids' cluttered furniture and synthetic rugs, I could finally see the original hardwood floors Ernest and I had installed. They were scratched and dull from abuse, but they were still there, solid as ever. I made a quick sandwich and ate it standing up in the kitchen, which suddenly had so much more counter space, without the giant espresso machine, the air fryer, and the bread maker Lucy used exactly once and abandoned. Only my little Italian mocha pot and my white ceramic plates remained. Then came time for phase 2, the financial phase. I put on my light coat, grabbed my purse, and locked the front door. Ray's truck was already gone packed to the roof. The house breathed a sigh of relief. I walked the 4 blocks to the local bank branch. The midday sun baked the asphalt. I felt light, like I had just dropped 50 pounds. As I walked into the bank, the air conditioning hit my face. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Morales," greeted the teller, a young guy who knew me from my monthly visits to deposit my pension. Making a withdrawal. I'm here to see the manager, and I'm here to cancel some cards. They showed me into the glass office. The branch manager, Mr. Peterson, was a man who sweated too much and always tried to upsell me insurance I didn't need. Adelaide, so good to see you. How can we help you today? Any issues with your authorized users? I pulled out the plastic cards I had retrieved from Robert's wallet the night before his trip when he left it sitting on the kitchen counter while loading the car. He thought he had lost them in the sofa cushions and left with just his own, but these were the authorized cards linked to my account, the ones I paid for. I want to cancel these extensions immediately, and I want to block any recurring automatic payments linked to my primary checking account that aren't basic utilities. Power, water, gas, stay. Everything else, Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, the gym, cut it all. Mr. Peterson dabbed his forehead with a handkerchief. But ma'am, if we do that, those services will be suspended. Your son-in-law, Robert, was in here a while back and mentioned those charges were vital for his work. I let out a short, dry laugh. Vital. The sports package subscription and online video game purchases are vital. Mr. Peterson, I am the primary account holder. My name is on the signature card. Cancel it all right now and drop the credit limit on my main card to the absolute minimum. The minimum. But you have an excellent credit line based on your history. I don't want it. Leave it at $500. Just enough for groceries and gas, nothing else. If anyone tries to swipe it for a penny over that, I want it declined. No overdraft protection, no courtesy calls, declined. The manager typed furiously on his keyboard, visibly uncomfortable. He knew he was losing a profitable customer, or rather a profitable victim. It's done, Mrs. Morales. The extra cards are dead. Recurring charges will bounce starting tomorrow. Thank you. That will be all. I walked out of the bank feeling the power buzzing in my fingertips. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't caused a scene. I simply turned off the tap. For years, they had drank from my hard work like it was an endless well. Now they were going to find out what thirst felt like. I walked back home. The late afternoon sun painted the bare walls of the living room a deep orange. I sat in my armchair, the only piece of furniture left in the room, and waited. I knew the hit was coming soon. The time difference was in my favor. Over there, it had to be dinner time. Time for the expensive themed restaurants. At 7 o'clock, my cell phone buzzed. It wasn't a call, it was text messages. A waterfall of bank notifications, security alert, attempted charge of $350 at Princess Royal Table. Declined. Security alert, attempted charge of $350. Declined. Security alert attempted charge of $50, declined. I smiled. They were swiping the card over and over, probably with the waiter staring at them impatiently and the kids crying from hunger. The phone rang. This time it was Robert. I answered on the second ring with a calmness that surprised even me. Yes. Mother-in-law, Robert screamed. There was no trace of his usual smugness, just pure panic and rage. What the hell is going on with the card? I'm standing in the Castle restaurant with the bill in my hand and the card won't go through. It says insufficient funds. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Hello, Robert. Good evening to you too, I said, inspecting my fingernails. It's not insufficient funds, it's just that the card has a limit. But it's always been open-ended, he roared. Call the bank right now, tell them it's a mistake. I have the restaurant manager standing right here. It's not a mistake, Robert. I did it. I went to the bank today. The silence on the line was graveyard still. I could hear his ragged breathing. What did you do? What? I lowered the limit and canceled the authorized cards. I realized I was spending way too much on unnecessary things. You know, like you said, we have to watch the household economy. Are you crazy? His voice dropped to a venomous whisper. We're in Disney. I don't have enough cash for this dinner. Lucy blew hers on souvenirs. You're going to leave us stranded. You have Lucy's credit card. No, the one you said was maxed out. Well, maybe it's time you dip into your own savings, Robert, or go wash dishes. Adelaide, he screamed, dropping the mother-in-law act entirely. You fix this right now. When we get back, we are having a very serious conversation about your senile dementia. You are not fit to handle your own money. That threat once upon a time would have made me tremble. It would have made me apologize and rush to solve their problem. But today, sitting in my empty living room, his threat sounded hollow, like a dog barking from behind a very distant fence. You're right, Robert. When you get back, we are going to have a very serious conversation. But for now, I suggest you ask to split the check or go find an ATM. Oh, and don't worry about the house. It's very quiet here. I hung up, and for the first time in my life, I turned my cell phone off, completely powered down. Silence reigned once more, but now I knew that thousands of miles away, absolute chaos had been unleashed. I pictured the scene. Robert purple with rage, Lucy frantically digging through her purse, the kids whining about where the dessert was. I got up and went to the kitchen. I opened a can of tuna for Duke and poured myself a glass of wine I had salvaged before the bar cart was hauled away. Cheers, Duke, I said, raising my glass to the dog. Tonight we dine in peace. The next day, Tuesday, Harvey Barnes arrived with the final paperwork. As he stepped inside, he stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes scanned the empty space, the walls where pretentious paintings used to hang, now just bare drywall with nails and dust outlines. Wow, he exhaled. Adelaide, you do not play around. I told you I wanted the house empty. It's unrecognizable. It looks bigger. It is Harvey. Dead weight takes up a lot of space. We sat at the dining room table, which I had decided to keep until the very last day. He laid out the documents. The smell of fresh ink and thick paper filled the air. I have good news. The investors are blown away by the speed. They accepted every single condition. The earnest money is already certified and the closing date is set for Friday. They're in a hurry to pull the demolition permits. Friday, I felt a brief wave of vertigo. That was 3 days away. Yes, that's very soon. I looked around. I looked out at the yard, where the grass was growing long because I had fired the landscaper. Why pay him if the dirt was about to get churned up anyway? No, Friday is perfect. Great. I just need your signature here, here, and here. Harvey pointed to the dotted lines. With this, the property legally transfers at noon on Friday. You have until then to hand over the keys. I took the pen. My hand didn't shake. I signed Adelaide Morales in firm, clear strokes. Every signature was a link in the chain snapping. One more thing, Adelaide, Harvey said, packing up his briefcase. The buyers asked if there's any issue with them bringing heavy machinery onto the lot this weekend. They want to start knocking down the perimeter wall on Saturday. I smiled, a smile that didn't reach my eyes but warmed my soul. Tell them they can bring all the machinery they want. My tenants get back Sunday night. It would be a real shame if they couldn't find the front door. Harvey looked at me with a mix of awe and sheer terror. I think that was the moment he finally grasped the full magnitude of my vengeance. It wasn't just about selling the house. It was about salting the earth behind me. You are a master strategist, ma'am. I would never want to be on your bad side. I'm just a mother who got tired, Harvey, and a grandmother who decided to retire from being a maid. Amen. That night, I slept like the dead. No nightmares about the hospital or the bills. I dreamed of the ocean, a calm blue sea where no one asked me for anything. Midweek on Wednesday, the landline rang again. I let it ring until the answering machine picked up. It was my neighbor Brenda, the neighborhood gossip, who lived glued to her window. Adelaide, honey, what is going on over there? I saw a massive truck on Monday, and now the house looks totally dark. And Robert called my cell phone. Imagine that he never even says hello to me, and he's asking if you're okay, saying you won't pick up. He says you're losing your mind. Do you need me to come over? I listened to the message and hit delete. I didn't need Brenda. I didn't need anyone. I started packing my own things. There wasn't much. My clothes fit into 2 large suitcases. My books, my memories of Ernest, my important documents, everything else, the old bedroom set, the dining table, I would leave behind. They were part of a life that no longer existed. I found an old shoebox at the bottom of my closet. Inside were photos of Lucy as a little girl, her birthday parties, her graduation. I stared into her eyes in those pictures, searching for the exact moment she mutated into this selfish stranger. I couldn't find it. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe I gave her too much. Maybe in trying to make sure she never suffered the hardships I went through, I stripped away her ability to value hard work. I picked up a photo of Ernest, Lucy, and me at the beach. We looked happy. I hesitated for a second. Should I keep it? Then I remembered her voice on the phone. I told you to stay and watch the house. I closed the box and tossed it into the donation pile. Let someone else make up happy stories about those faces. I was going to write a new one with no ghosts. Friday morning broke cloudy and gray. The air was thick with static electricity. I got up early, showered, and put on my best travel outfit, pearl gray slacks and a crisp white blouse. Duke was restless like he knew the big day was here. I snapped on his new leash. At 11 o'clock, a black car pulled up to the curb. It wasn't Harvey. It was a private car service I had booked. The driver, a polite young man, got out to help me with my bags. Just these, ma'am. Just these, and the dog. We loaded the trunk. Before getting in, I went back inside the house one last time. It was empty, completely gutted. My footsteps cracked like gunshots down the hall. I went into the kitchen and left the keys on the granite counter, the one Lucy always complained about because she wanted marble. Next to the keys, I left an envelope. It wasn't an apology letter. It wasn't a long tearjerker explanation. Inside the envelope were just 2 things. The receipt for the hotel where I was staying that night, before my flight paid for with my own money, naturally, and a glossy travel brochure I had picked up at a travel agency. The brochure read, "Europe awaits senior luxury tours." And written across the front of the brochure in my sharp, steady nurse's handwriting was a note. The house has been watched. It's been watched so well that you never have to worry about it again. Enjoy Disney. Reality is waiting for you when you get back. I walked out and pulled the door shut. The click of the deadbolt sounded delightfully final. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked as I settled into the back seat with Duke beside me. I looked at the house through the tinted window. I saw the overgrown lawn. I saw the facade that would soon be rubble. And for the first time in years, I didn't see a prison. I saw a cashier's check. "To the airport, young man," I said, a genuine smile lighting up my face. "And take your time. I'm in no rush. Nobody is waiting for me, and that is the most wonderful feeling in the world." The car pulled away. As we drove off, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a pickup truck with the developer's logo pull into my old driveway. A man got out holding blueprints and a sledgehammer. Right on time. My cell phone, which I had turned back on purely for emergencies, buzzed in my purse. It was a text from Robert. "Mother-in-law, we borrowed money from a buddy. We are furious. When we get back on Sunday, you have a lot of explaining to do. Don't touch anything in my office." I read the text and let out a laugh that startled Duke. "Oh, Robert," I whispered to the phone. "I haven't touched a thing. But I'm afraid the office isn't going to be there when you get back." I slipped the phone away and looked straight ahead. The highway opened up in front of me, endless and full of possibilities. The execution had been flawless. Now came the reveal. And even though I wouldn't be there to see the look on their faces, my imagination was a pretty sweet consolation prize. The game was over. Checkmate. Saturday dawned with a gray stillness, the kind that promises rain. But I woke up wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets in a suite at the most exclusive hotel in the downtown district, 12 miles away from my old life. I was in no rush. I ordered room service, fresh fruit, hot coffee, and eggs. Benedict, something I never dared cook at home because of the mess it makes. As I buttered a piece of warm toast, my cell phone propped up against the flower vase on the table lit up. It wasn't a call. It was a push notification from the smart home security app I hadn't deleted yet. Motion detected at front door. 9:15 a.m. I smiled and took a sip of my coffee. They came back early, of course. Cutting off the credit cards must have been a lethal blow to their fantasy vacation. Without money for lightning lanes or character dining, Disney loses its magic real fast. I opened the app to check the live feed. The image was crystal clear. A yellow cab was pulling away, leaving a mountain of luggage on the sidewalk and 3 people staring at the front of the house with their jaws practically on the floor. Robert was pounding on the front door with his fist. Lucy was frantically digging through her purse, pulling out a set of keys that jingled uselessly. The kids, exhausted and jet-lagged, were sitting on the suitcases whining. "Open the damn door," I could read my son-in-law's lips through the screen. He shoved his key into the deadbolt. He twisted. Nothing. He tried again, forcing it violently. The key wouldn't turn because the lock cylinder had been drilled out and replaced on Friday at 3 o'clock by the developer's locksmith. Robert stepped back, kicked the solid oak door, the wood I used to polish every single year, and pulled out his phone. My cell phone buzzed on the hotel table. Incoming call, Robert's son-in-law. I let it ring 5 times. I wanted the desperation to breathe a little like a good wine. On the 6th ring, I swiped the screen and answered, putting it on speakerphone while I sliced a piece of melon. "Good morning," I said, my voice bright and well-rested. "What the hell did you do to the locks?" Robert's scream was so loud I had to turn the volume down. "We're outside, my kids are starving, the key won't go in. Open this door right now or I'm kicking it down." "I wouldn't recommend that, Robert," I replied, dabbing the corner of my mouth with a cloth napkin. "That door isn't mine anymore, and it's sure as hell not yours. If you break it, they're going to charge you with destruction of private property. And considering your credit cards are declined, I don't think that's a smart financial move." "What are you talking about, you crazy old bat?" Lucy cut in, snatching the phone from her husband. Her voice was shaking, a toxic cocktail of fury and fear. "Mom, stop playing around. We had to fly back on the first cheap flight we could find because you left us without a dime. Open the door." "I can't open it, honey. I'm not there." "What do you mean you're not there? Where are you?" "I'm having breakfast," I said, looking out the hotel window at the city skyline. "And you guys should probably go find somewhere to eat too. Because in that house there is no kitchen, no fridge, and probably starting Monday, no roof." On the video feed, I watched Robert shove Lucy aside to press his face against the living room window, cupping his hands over his eyes to see inside. His reaction was worthy of an Oscar. He stumbled backward, pale as if he'd just seen a ghost. "It's empty, huh?" he screamed, spinning toward Lucy with his eyes bulging out of his skull. "Lucy, there's nothing in there. They stole everything. Call the cops. We've been cleaned out." "Nobody stole anything," I interrupted, my voice hardening into steel. "Everything was legally sold or donated." "My consoles, my 80-inch TV," Robert bellowed, grabbing the phone back. "I had my savings invested in that." "Your TV is currently in the rec room at the St. Vincent nursing home," I informed him, a wave of pure satisfaction rolling down my spine. "The seniors are absolutely thrilled to watch the news in high definition. And my savings. Well, Robert, let's just say your toys paid the back interest on the 5 years you lived rent-free under my roof." "I'm going to sue you!" he shrieked, red in the face, swinging his free arm wildly. "That house is my wife's inheritance. You had no right." "Misdiagnosis, doctor, yes," I said, dropping into my clinical tone, the one I saved for arrogant surgical residents. "The house was in my name. Sole owner. I have the deeds, the bill of sale, and the cashier's check to prove it. The property was sold on Friday, as is." Dead silence on the line. On the video feed, I watched Lucy collapse onto one of the Disney suitcases. She still had her Minnie Mouse ears on, looking utterly ridiculous in the middle of a tragedy. "You sold the house," she whispered, like her brain couldn't process the syllables. "Dad's house." "Yes, Lucy, your father's house. The one you two turned into a flophouse and an emotional dumping ground. I sold it to get my life back. Bakis o istes. But what about us? She asked. And for the first time, I heard the voice of the little girl she used to be long before she became so cruel. Where are we going to live? That is an excellent question for your husband, the man of the house, I replied, not yielding a single inch. He always said I was a burden, that I was in the way. Well, honey, the burden took herself out of the way. You have total freedom now. No grandmother bothering you, no mother-in-law watching you. You're free. Right at that moment, a black pickup truck with the developer's logo pulled up to the curb on the video feed. A tall man in a yellow hard hat hopped out carrying a clipboard. The foreman. Behind him, 2 uniformed private security guards stepped out of a second vehicle. Harvey Barnes wasn't kidding when he said they protected their investments. Who are these guys? Robert asked, his voice suddenly dropping in volume, intimidated by the physical presence of authority. They are the new owners, or their representatives, I explained. I suggest you move your bags off the sidewalk. They're going to be in the way of the heavy machinery arriving tomorrow. Mom, please. Lucy started sobbing. It wasn't the crying of someone who was sorry. It was the crying of a spoiled child whose candy had just been snatched away. We have nowhere to go. We don't have any money. The kids are exhausted. Just let us in, even if we have to sleep on the floor. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. The old maternal instinct, that treacherous muscle that had always made me forgive them for everything, tried to kick in. But then I looked down at my hands. I looked at my knuckles deformed by years of hard labor to pay for that house, to pay for their degrees, to pay for their whims. I remembered Robert's laugh. You stay and watch the house. That laugh was my antidote. I don't have the keys, Lucy. I handed them over yesterday, and even if I had them, I wouldn't open the door. You have your health, you have your youth, and you have 2 college degrees that I paid for. Figure it out. You're a witch, Robert screamed, losing his mind as he saw the security guards approaching them, gesturing for them to leave the property. I hope you rot with your money. You are never going to see your grandkids again. That is a price I am willing to pay for my peace of mind, I said, and for the first time, I truly meant it. Besides, Robert, with the kind of money I have now, I can travel to see them whenever I want. Assuming you ever manage to get a place of your own to host me. Ma'am? I heard a foreign voice over the phone. It was the security guard talking to Robert. This is private property owned by Barnes Development. You need to clear the perimeter. We live here. Robert tried to defend himself, but his voice cracked high and weak. Not anymore, the guard said firmly. You aren't on the property deed. Please move along or we'll have to call dispatch. I watched on the screen as Robert tried to puff up his chest, but he deflated almost instantly. Lucy was sobbing her head in her hands. The kids, terrified by the yelling, were clinging to their mother's legs. It was a pathetic image, but a necessary one. It was the radical surgery we needed to cut out the cancer of dependency. Mom, Lucy said one last time into the phone, her voice completely broken. What are we supposed to do? What adults do? Lucy? I replied with a calm that shocked me. Grow up. Go find a cheap motel, take out a loan, sell the jewelry I gave you. Learn what life actually costs. I am no longer your ATM and I am no longer your maid. I am your mother. And the best lesson I can give you right now is to let you fall so you can learn how to get back up. I hate you, she whispered. I know. You'll get over it the next time you need money and realize that hate doesn't pay the rent. I hung up. I stared at the phone screen for a few seconds longer. I watched as Robert, completely defeated, grabbed the heavy suitcases, the same ones he refused to lift for me, and started walking down the street looking for a cab, followed closely by Lucy and the kids. They walked hunched over like they were carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. For the first time in 5 years, my driveway was clear. I closed the security app and deleted it. The final digital cord was cut. I got up from the table, walked over to the full-length mirror in the suite, and took a good look at myself. I didn't see a cruel old woman. I saw a woman who had just saved herself from drowning. I smoothed my hair, took a deep breath, and felt my lungs fill with clean air, totally free from the stale mothball scent of resignation. I grabbed my purse. I had a flight to catch in 3 hours. I wasn't going to Europe like the decoy brochure I left them claimed. That was just to throw them off the scent. My real destination was a small coastal town down south where a retired nurse friend of mine owned a bed and breakfast. I was going to look at the ocean. I was going to eat fresh fish. And above all, I was going to sleep without the fear of someone screaming at me for not washing a dish. On my way out, I left a generous tip for the housekeeper. You should always value other people's hard work, something my kids never learned, but that life with its heavy hand was about to teach them by force. As I rode the glass elevator down, watching the city spread out beneath my feet, my cell phone buzzed with a text message. It was from the bank. Deposit received. Wire transfer Barnes Development. Current balance. I stared at the number. It was obscene. And it was beautiful. I watched the house, Robert, I muttered to myself, smiling at my reflection in the elevator's steel doors. I watched it right down to the very last penny. Now the real transformation was beginning. They had to build a life from scratch. I just had to enjoy the one I had left. And boy, was I planning to enjoy it. The elevator doors slid open into the bright sunlit lobby. The world was massive, and finally it was mine. The salty breeze of the Pacific has a funny way of healing old wounds. It doesn't erase them, but it scrubs them clean, letting them scar over with sun and salt. It's been 6 months since I pulled that oak door shut for good. And sometimes when I'm sitting on the terrace of the Blue Inn, I still think I hear the echo of Robert's yelling or my grandkids' manipulative crying. But then the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks washes those ghosts away, bringing me right back to the present. A present that for the first time in decades belongs entirely to me. Out here on the coast, life beats to a different rhythm. My friend Martha, the same nurse I pulled endless double shifts with 40 years ago, took me in not as a refugee, but as a business partner. Her little boutique hotel needed a firm hand on the books and someone who knew how to smile at guests without letting them walk all over her. It turned out the useless old woman who couldn't even watch an empty house was perfectly capable of running a hospitality business in the middle of peak tourist season. I wake up at 6 in the morning, not because someone is demanding breakfast, but because I like watching the sun turn the water pink. Duke, my old lab, seems to have shed 5 years off his age. He doesn't hide under the furniture shaking anymore. Now he chases seagulls in the sand and sleeps belly up in the shade of the palm trees, completely unafraid of a spoiled kid yanking his tail or stealing his food. If he could heal, so could I. The transformation wasn't magical, it was hard work. For the first few days, the guilt was agonizing. That sticky Catholic guilt they drill into mothers, telling us we have to suffer for our children, that we have to be martyrs right up to the grave. I would wake up in a cold sweat wondering if Lucy had enough money to keep the lights on or if Robert had found a job. But then I'd remember the black notebook, the insults, the stay and watch the house. And the guilt would harden into a certainty as cold and solid as granite. I didn't abandon them. I emancipated them. Their reality reaches me in tiny drops, now filtered through emails I only read when I feel like it, and through the discreet updates Harvey Barnes sends me every month, along with my investment portfolio statements. Apparently, the fall from the Disney cloud was brutal. Robert tried to sue me naturally. Harvey told me, laughing, that not a single decent lawyer would touch the case once they saw the house was 100% mine and the sale was bulletproof. They burned through whatever cash they had left on useless legal consultations. The last I heard, Robert, the big shot who used to mock cab drivers, is now driving for a rideshare app just to pay rent on a 2-bedroom apartment in a blue-collar neighborhood. The irony is exquisite. Now he's the one hauling other people's luggage. Lucy had to sell her designer bags. That hurt to hear. Not because of the bags, but because of the sheer humiliation my daughter, so proud, so vain, must have felt. But that pain was mixed with hope. Harvey mentioned he saw her working as a receptionist at a dental clinic. It's honest work. For the first time in her life, Lucy is earning her bread with the sweat of her own brow and not by swiping my credit card. Adelaide, Martha says, setting an iced coffee on my table on the terrace. You've got a call on line 2. It's the nursing home. I put my book down and walk into the lobby. The receiver feels light in my hand. Hello, Adelaide, it's the director at St. Vincent's. The woman's voice is vibrating with excitement, using that genuine tone you only hear from people who work out of pure calling. I didn't want to bother you, but I just had to tell you. We opened the physical therapy room today. I smile. A chunk of the cash from selling Robert's luxury furniture plus a hefty donation I made from the house profits paid for it. I'm so glad to hear that, director. Did the equipment work out? Did it work out, Adelaide? It's a miracle. And I have to tell you something that's going to make you laugh. You remember the giant TV? The one that looked like a movie screen? How could I forget? I say, remembering the endless afternoons Robert spent parked in front of it, tuning out the world. Well, we put it in the common room. The residents are absolutely mesmerized watching nature documentaries. Mr. Gregory, the one who barely speaks. He said yesterday he'd never seen a lion that big. That screen has brought the world to people who can't go out and see it anymore. A knot forms in my throat, but it's a sweet one. I'm glad that contraption is finally being used for something good, I reply. Enjoy it. You are an angel, Adelaide. No director, I'm just a woman who decided to put resources where they're actually needed. I hang up and stare across the hotel lobby. There are fresh flowers in the vases. The exact same orchids Lucy used to let die from neglect. Out here, they grow wild in the ocean humidity. Sometimes I think about the old house. I heard they demolished it 2 months ago. Harvey texted me a picture asking if I wanted to see it. I told him no, I don't need to look at rubble. That house served its purpose. It was Ernest's and my home. Then it became my prison. And finally, it was my ticket to freedom. Let them build their modern condos. Let new people move in with new stories. I don't live in the bricks of the past anymore. The greatest lesson I've learned these past few months has nothing to do with money, even though it certainly helps you sleep at night. It has to do with respect. Here in town, nobody looks at me like the grandmother. I am Mrs. Morales. The fishermen tip their hats to me when I buy the morning catch. The tourists ask for my recommendations. Martha trusts my medical judgment whenever a guest feels under the weather. I got my name back. The sun starts to dip, painting the sky in violent shades of violet and orange colors that never looked this vibrant through the smog of the city. I head back to my little cabin at the edge of the property. It's a modest space, just a bedroom, a bathroom, and a kitchenette. But it's mine. There are no toys on the floor, no dirty dishes left by someone else. There's only silence and peace. I sit in the rocking chair on my porch. Duke drops heavily at my feet, letting out a contented sigh. I pull out my tablet. Yes, I learned how to use it perfectly now that nobody is hovering over me, calling me slow. I open my email. There's a new message. The subject line reads, "Sorry, it's from Lucy." My fingers hover over the screen. For months, her messages were nothing but demands, hatred, and entitlement. How could you? You're a thief. You're going to die alone. But this one is different. It's short. I open it. Mom, I got my 3rd paycheck today. I paid the kids' enrollment fees for the public school. It's hard. Robert comes home exhausted and we don't fight as much because we just don't have the energy. The kids ask about you. I told them you were traveling. I don't know when I'll be able to forgive you for the house. But today I had to cook rice and I remembered how you used to make it. I burned it. I just wanted to tell you that I burned the rice and I cried. I read the message twice. There is no I love you. But there is humanity. There is an acknowledgement of reality. The burned rice is her very first lesson in humility. They are learning that food doesn't magically appear on the table, that money costs hours of your life, and that the mother they had wasn't a household appliance. She was the load-bearing pillar holding up their entire fantasy. I don't reply. Not yet. Replying now would mean stepping back in, rushing to fix their pain. They need to feel the burned rice. They need to learn how to scrape the bottom of the pot and start over. That is the only valuable inheritance I can leave them now, the ability to survive. I close the tablet and look out at the horizon. I've been thinking a lot about Ernest lately. At first, I felt like I had betrayed his memory by selling our estate. But now, feeling the sea breeze on my face, I know he'd be raising a glass with me. He hated watching Robert take advantage of me. He used to tell me, "Adelaide, you are the oak tree of this family." Well, old man, the oak got tired of providing shade for people who only wanted to chop it down for firewood. The oak transplanted its roots into soil where it actually gets watered. I have plans for tomorrow. I'm going into the next town over with Martha to look at some artisan looms. I want to buy new curtains for the guest rooms. I'm going to use my money, my time, and my taste. And on Sunday, maybe, just maybe, I'll FaceTime my grandkids. Not to promise them toys or trips to Disney, but so they can see that their grandmother is happy. So they can see that life doesn't end at 60 or 70. So they learn that dignity doesn't have an expiration date. I pour myself a glass of white wine, crisp and cold. I raise the glass to the moon, just starting to peek over the silver water. "To the house," I whisper, and the word doesn't weigh me down anymore. And to those who stayed behind to watch it their way. I take a sip. The wine tastes like glory. It tastes like victory. My kids went to Disney looking for plastic magic, and in their arrogance, they gave me the real thing, the magic of finding myself again. They thought they were leaving me behind, trapped in the past, babysitting their misery. They didn't know that by leaving me alone, they were handing me the keys to the cell. Now I'm the one traveling. Not on planes or cruise ships, but in the massive, quiet relief of knowing that finally nobody owes me a thing and I owe nothing to anyone. Duke lifts his head and lets out a soft bark at a passing firefly. Easy, boy, I tell him, stroking his head. We're home. This time we're really home. The night wraps around me warm and welcoming. Tomorrow is another day, and it will be mine. All mine.